Hello, everyone, and welcome to Digital Leaders Week 2021. We hope you've had the opportunity to look at the other events going on this week. I know it's been a fantastic week. And welcome to this webinar, How Do We Get More Women in Tech? Practical Steps for Leaders. So I just want to do a quick pulse check before we get started. If you could just say hi in the chat to let me know that you can see and hear us okay. Hi, Maxine. Hi, Josh. Thank you guys so much. That's really good. Okay, brilliant. Everyone can hear us and see us okay. Fantastic. So before we start this webinar, I'd just like to take the opportunity to introduce our speakers. So I'm just going to stop sharing that so we can all see all their lovely faces. And here we go. So let's kick things off with our first speaker, Rose McCarterfield. Rose, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Rose McCarterfield and I'm the founder and managing director of Project Recruit. I'm passionate about getting more women into technology, and at Project Recruit we work closely with our clients working on projects to recruit diverse talent. I'm really pleased to be speaking as part of the Digital Leaders Week 2021 with Laura and Emma. I'm not new to public speaking, but I am very new to webinars. This is an exciting challenge. I'm embracing it, and I've got a little bit of apprehension bubbling in the sidelines. I'm going to be looking at another screen as I'm talking to you, which has got my notes on it, so I'm just going to forewarn you of that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you all, to talking to you all today.
Brilliant. And Emma, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Broadway. I'm the founder and CEO of an organisation called Talent Partnership Consulting. So a little bit about me, so you know who you're talking to. After many years of working in the executive TA and D&I process engineering function, and also I worked for a period of time at Microsoft as a D&I program manager, I decided to devote the next part of my career to really driving change in organisations, moreover by fulfilling an ambition to build a fair and equitable world. So I'm here today as I have a huge passion for empowering others, coupled with excitement about the pace of change within equality, sustainability, and digitalisation. And I love working with visionary talent to make this happen. So thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to coming back a little bit later.
Thank you for joining us, both of you. And just a little bit about myself. My name is Laura West, and I work with Scala to promote tech skills for all through apprenticeships and digital skills training. And I have a huge passion for boosting the number of women in tech. So with that said, let's get this rolling, and we'll start with our slide deck. So here we go. How to get more women in tech, practical steps for leaders. We just have a couple of housekeeping things to kick this off. So this is scheduled to last 45 minutes. I do request that attendees keep their video turned off just so it doesn't start switching between speakers. You can interact with us via Q&A and the chat box, and we'll try to get to that at the end. If needed, you can also customize your stage by either dragging and dropping someone's video to the top or right-clicking and setting it to pin to stage. This recording will be sent out after the webinar. Digital leaders should probably get to that within the next couple of days. Brilliant. So here are the speakers again, if you want to screenshot that for more detail. So let's get this started by looking at the situation for women in tech today. As we all know, there's a huge tech skills shortage in the UK and across the world, really. So you can see for yourself with these stats here. So how can we address this? Well, women only account for between 17 and 19% of tech staff, and this number is decreasing. And from a senior point of view, it's 77% of tech directors are male, and only 23% are women. And this is lower than the national average across other industries. So it's rather shocking in the context of this tech skills shortage with these stats. Imagine what could happen if we got the number of women in tech up to 50%. So women in tech is really the solution here, because at the moment it means that the biggest problem facing the tech sector is that it isn't even appealing to a huge portion of the population. And this lack of diversity means that we have less talent to be able to face the challenges of the future in tech. And really something we want to emphasize above all throughout this presentation is that diversity is essential to delivering excellence in STEM. This is a wider diversity issue too, because minority groups such as people with disabilities, people of colour, the LGBTQ+ community are all severely underrepresented in tech. So with that in mind, we'd like to take this moment for you as recruiters, senior leaders, managers, to consider the gender gap in your organisation. What is the split at different hierarchical levels? And is there a difference between roles and departments? What is the gender ratio in your leadership versus your shop floor? What is it in the tech versus admin department or marketing and HR? And you can also consider the gender of applicants you receive for new roles. And what about the gender split for those that apply and are successful in gaining internal promotions? That's all something that's really worth thinking about. So looking at what we're going to cover in this webinar, we really wanted to give everyone the practical steps that they can take away to implement in their own organizations. We all know that persistent action is needed for long-term change, but these practical steps we hope you can take away for yourselves today. So firstly, we have step 1, making impactful change through recruitment. And this is something that Rose will be talking about. Step 2, using apprenticeships to boost talent diversity. This is something that I will be talking about later on. And lastly, we'll be finishing off with Emma talking about laying the foundations for long-term change. So with that said, it's my pleasure to hand over to our first speaker, Rose, to discuss what changes you can make with recruitment.
Hi there. Have the first slide, please, Laura. So, as you've heard from Laura, getting more women into technology is a huge topic. It's hard not to feel overwhelmed, and it's also very hard to know where to start. Today, I'm concentrating on the quick wins, things that you can roll out immediately to help recruit diverse talent. You can make impactful change to gender equality in your organisation, and it starts from how you recruit your staff. You can develop gender-inclusive recruitment processes, gender-inclusive recruitment communications, and a gender-inclusive culture that will attract female talent. How do we do that? How do we get the female talent that is out there to us? First, a bit of background. Recruiting women in tech doesn't happen automatically. It takes a conscious, sustained effort from the top. You need to create a culture of inclusivity to attract female hires. And you have the power and the influence to make impactful changes to gender equality in your organisation, and it does start in the recruiting pipeline. Companies such as Nokia, Microsoft and Airbnb are taking these steps, and they're seeing their talent pool open up across all genders. So first I want to look at Nokia. Next slide, please, Laura. Nokia are a really interesting example of an organisation who are getting it right. They've thought through the issue, and they've made some major, but also some very subtle changes to improve gender equality. In 2019, Nokia joined the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index. They made a commitment to improving gender equality. The index included internal company statistics, as well as employee policies. First off, they looked at 4 areas, and the first area they looked at was the gender pay gap. They had a pay gap of up to around 19% between genders. They looked at it, they addressed it, and they equalised it. They also, after doing that, took steps to ensure that they did not inherit inequalities moving forward. So they don't collect salary from candidates for new roles. Don't collect the salary history from candidates for new roles. This avoids inheriting pay inequalities, and they base the offer on the value of the role. The next area that they looked at was female-focused recruitment. They encourage women to join in the running of the recruitment drives. They also used imagery in their adverts and on their websites to help women visualise working for the business. They highlighted gender inclusivity in their company as part of their recruitment in order to attract new talent. They set up specific women's forums and networking groups. They recognise that it is a male environment, and these groups help to balance out the gender equality in the working environment. The next area that they looked at was mandatory gender equality leadership training. So all the leaders have the training. They identify that, and that helps identify and remove the bias. And it helps look at how they work in terms of gender bias in their communications and their operations. They also looked at gender bias in their recruitment processes and within their day-to-day culture. And the final area that they looked at was creating a gender inclusive work-life balance. So of course it started with flexible working, but that included working from home and flexible hours, and that allowed their staff to meet both family and work commitments. They also, interestingly, ran some return to work schemes. So when staff were returning to work after a break, the HR team supported them in coming back to work. But they looked quite specifically at any training that was missed, as well as any missed promotions, and focused on those quite specifically to enable the person returning to work to lift up their experience as they were coming back in. So I appreciate that some of these points may not seem directly related to recruitment, but they are major factors that are putting women off from joining a company. Women care about pay, about culture, about work-life balance. And Emma will talk about these points a bit in a little while. So Laura, next slide, please. So quick wins. So Nokia are a very interesting case study, and the changes that they have shown have really shown some positive results. So on to the quick wins. The aim is to help to start you on a route to more gender inclusive recruitment, and it covers I'm covering three areas today. The first is role profiling. Women have been found to approach job specs differently. If they aren't 100% qualified, they may not apply. So it's really important to drill down on what skills and experience is absolutely essential and what is just nice to have. So rather than saying everything is essential, it's just drilling down and making sure that you're really pulling in on those key areas and then looking at what training could be given to bring up in the nice to have section. So the next area we looked at is motivating management to consider where training could be used rather than buying in skills. Just widening the applicant pool, and the use of training, of course, helps increase staff retention and helps grow a strong culture. The other thing we looked at is the words used in role descriptions, especially in technology. They've been proven to put women off. Avoid words such as "we need a tech superhero" and overuse of technical terms. Plain English is more accessible and makes the role look more inclusive to those who may not possess exactly the skills that are required. And it's making sure the role descriptions enable applicants to visualise how it feels to be in the company. What's the culture like? What's the team like? What will life be like in that role? And if the reality doesn't fit, then just about considering the internal culture and the commitment of leadership to equality. Both women and men need to be involved in the recruitment process, writing the job descriptions and the shortlisting criteria. It really helps reduce the potential of any gender bias. On to my next point, advertising. It's key to use images with women in it. Use gender inclusive language and avoid images that show overtly seniority of men over women. Women need to see women in leadership to know that they have a future within your business. And if there are women in your leadership team, make sure they're visible and perhaps, if it's possible, maybe add quotes from them. What does the work-life balance look like at your company? Is there flexible working? Will mothers or parents be supported in their career with you? Netflix, very interestingly, offers parents of any gender up to a year off with full pay after the birth or an adoption of a child, while Microsoft and Airbnb offer 22 weeks to new mums with full pay. Consider when candidates are doing their research on your business, what information is out there about you. So on Google, LinkedIn and Glassdoor and other social media channels, what does the internet trail say about you as a business and as a balanced work environment? And then on to my last point, shortlisting. And I think personally, this is one of the key ones. We are all programmed to be drawn to people like us. So it's important to train interviewers to recognise this and try and balance out who interviews candidates. Men and women pick up on different cues and chime with candidates in different ways, creating a clearer picture of an individual. So it's making sure there's a consistent set of questions and key requirements from interviews. This avoids the I've got a good feeling trap and focuses on what's really important, as well as making the process fairer for candidates. Women are also likely to be modest in an interview, so be inquisitive, ask about their experience, use lots of open questions. It helps you get a fairer picture. Give a balanced picture back to the candidate at interview. It will help them make an informed choice and set expectations of how the organisation is and where it's going. And if your organisation isn't yet the balanced model, that's fine. Be honest, but state your intention. That's where you're going. And this honesty, I believe, will attract candidates as well as offer acceptances. So those are our quick wins for gender inclusive recruitment. They're changes that you can make today, and they're all fairly small, but they will help start to make a real difference in gender inclusive recruitment. So back to you, Laura.
Thank you so much, Rose. That was fantastic. And we've got some quotes here from the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index, which are really, really key to kind of everything that we've been talking about here. So I'll just give you a moment to read those. And if you want to take a little screenshot, please do so. So moving on from that, our next section is talking about using apprenticeships to boost talent diversity. And I know that when a lot of people think about apprenticeships, they might have a very outdated image of what being an apprentice means. And they have this idea that apprentices are getting tea and coffee and not really getting any work experience. But all that's really changed now, and it can provide a really solid foundation for entrance into many industries. So I want to share with you a story about how apprenticeships can help. This is Zoe, and Zoe is one of our women in tech success stories. She did a software developer apprenticeship with us in 2017. And she did have a background in technical skills, but she hadn't been involved in the tech industry or done any kind of coding for 4 years. She'd actually been working as a receptionist and then as a business support assistant for a local council for 2 years and then 6 years. She started on a software developer apprenticeship scheme, and she started with a company that she is still with now and has been promoted to lead developer at that company, which is one that she started with over 4 years ago. So she's really a great example of how the different pathways and roles in tech can help you to boost your career and even change careers. Currently, she manages a range of projects and has experience of even managing a team. She has also had the opportunity to do more training, and she recently completed a UX design course. So she's really flying high, and we're incredibly proud of her success story. So let's have a look at how apprenticeships can be a route into tech. Above all, apprenticeships are accessible. In particular, they are financially accessible, and they can help learners avoid student debt or high retraining costs as they provide paid employment and are funded by the government. And if you don't already know about it, this is through the Apprenticeship Levy Funding Scheme. So apprentices do not pay for apprenticeship training, and large employers already pay into the levy pot. Secondly, apprenticeships really are open to anyone. You do not have to have a STEM degree to do a tech apprenticeship, and you don't even have to have a university degree, although you can still be a university graduate to be able to do a tech apprenticeship anyway. All you need is English and maths GCSEs, although you just need this by the end of your training, and training providers can help with this. And above all, a passion for tech. So apprenticeships are open to anyone from school leavers, university graduates, and even mature candidates. There's this big misconception that apprenticeships are just for young people, but in fact, they don't have any age limit at all. There's no kind of cookie cutter image for what an apprentice should look like. And honestly, as the working age increases every year, so do people's careers, and you have plenty of options to evolve and change with the times. Thirdly, and this is really key, apprenticeships allow employers to hire from untapped pools of talent. For example, hiring from local communities and they can focus on applicants without a traditional education or career path. So this means that employers are not just limited to that highly competitive, male-dominated pool of STEM graduates. Lastly, apprenticeships are flexible. And this is really important because it helps create that stereotypical image of tech. Creating this accessible and flexible image is really important because it makes tech seem more accessible. And with that kind of variety of apprenticeships that are on offer, there are so many different routes and pathways into the tech industry. So it allows people to choose the preferred route and pathway which best suits them. From dealing with data to coding, digital support, project management, and design, it's really important to make it clear all the different types of roles out there to break down this stereotypical image. And even with these apprenticeship and recruitment efforts, we can still only do so much. And it's still really important to get it down to that grassroots approach. And when it comes down to schools, and to help break down this image, it's really important to get girls and everyone interested while they're young. So looking at a stat from Girls Who Code, it's quite shocking. We actually have 74% of girls express interest in STEM subjects at school, but only 0.4% of girls choose to do computer science for a degree. So there must be something happening in between there that we need to do something about. So what can we do about this? Well, companies and organizations can partner with schools to promote STEM sectors in a fun and creative way. Your company, if you aren't already aware of them, could join organizations such as Tech Talent Charter, which actually Emma is an ambassador for, or Tech She Can. And they do things like create free lesson plans for parents and teachers to inspire children, particularly girls, to see the real possibility a job in tech could bring. They also do hackathons to get everyone thinking about the kind of the policy changes that you can make. So let's have a look at the other ways that apprenticeships can help boost the number of women in tech. As we all know, apprenticeships are brilliant for bringing new talent into the tech industry. But what a lot of companies aren't aware of is that you can also use apprenticeships to upskill, reskill, and help people return to work. So from this upskilling perspective, we can use apprenticeships to upskill and retrain your existing workforce. By completing an apprenticeship, women or anyone, in fact, can help advance their careers by upskilling in their industry and thus improve their salary and help them build skills in a specialist area. From an employer's perspective, they can help boost female employee motivation by investing in their development, by using apprenticeships as a part of their training, which has shown to improve retention. And looking at reskilling, what if a woman wants to enter a new and better paid field? Well, apprenticeships can facilitate this, and they can help with reskilling, moving into a new field that requires different skills and abilities. And this can help women reskill into those higher paid and in-demand roles, which really would go a long way to bridge the gender pay gap. And lastly, returning. So for people returning to work after parental leave, childcare responsibilities, or illness, apprenticeships can also provide a flexible way back to a career. Often when people are returning to work after a career break, they may feel this low confidence. So gaining new skills or sharpening old ones can help rebuild this. Retraining, as we know, can also be expensive if returners are self-funded. But apprenticeships can help returners gain new qualifications and related work experience while also receiving a salary. So how else can apprenticeships help? Well, mentorship and support, which I know Emma will also touch on later, is really key to creating an inclusive culture for anyone within an organization. So from an apprenticeship perspective, how does this fit in? Well, one-to-one mentorship is really, really important. This means that women and other underrepresented groups can have the opportunity to enter the tech sector within an environment of mentorship and support. For example, this kind of supportive environment helps empower young women to feel confident in perhaps a male-dominated industry or workspace. And with trainer support, trainers can help apprentices to build that strong set of skills so that they can feel confident about their abilities in a work environment. And lastly, it's not just with those tech skills, but it's also helping apprentices with soft skills so they feel comfortable talking with colleagues, expressing themselves within a team, within an organization, and they can really feel confident in that team setting. So with that said, we're moving on to our next segment, which is Emma talking about laying the long-term foundations for change. Emma, take it away.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Rose. I can't tell you how humbled I am hearing the story of Zoe. The first time I heard this, I actually had tears literally pringling in my eyes, because I do think that, when we think about those deeply technical roles, this is absolutely, a longer term, fix that we can have here. So just to recap on a couple of points we've heard from Laura and Rose today, I just want to revisit why it's so important to lay the foundations for long-term change. So, number one, diversity increases awareness and curiosity. It promotes individuality, and it creates a healthier environment. So a workplace lacking in diversity and inclusion will detrimentally affect mental health and have a direct causal relationship with feelings of resentment, anxiety, anger, and injustice. So a business not only has to prime the engine with a diverse mix of good promotion candidates, but they have to think about those truly equal opportunities for promotions, not just once, but all the way through to the executive suite for a healthy, diverse workplace. Diversity is good for business, right? So being responsible, having a resilient workplace embraces inclusion, diversity and equality, and has a direct positive effect on productivity in the workplace. It really helps businesses and employees thrive. So if you can align your business objectives with the meeting of the human need, companies can really tap into powerful ways to facilitate change. And as McKinsey's have noted, diverse companies are far more likely to outperform their less diverse peers. Diversity promotes new thinking. It unites us. It leads to a better understanding generally of our workplace. But something that's very close to my heart is diversity promotes respect. And the more time we spend interacting with people that are different to us, the stronger is our understanding, acceptance, and relationships become, and ultimately our respect for one another. So a visible commitment to diversity and inclusion really strengthens a company's image from a candidate and a customer perspective. So we've heard about some really good examples of short-term wins, but let's explore now some ideas on how to build a sustainable long-term ED&I or equity, diversity and inclusion solution. So if we could just move on to the next slide, please, Laura, that'd be great. So when you get into a car to embark on a journey, you need to know your surroundings. What are the conditions going to be like? And these days we use Google Maps to see how long the journey is going to take and which is the best route to take. And often we take a mental audit to really plan our journey before we even get in the car. So do we have everything we need? In my case, I not only need Google Maps, but coffee glasses and an Audible book to listen to if it's a long journey. But the same applies to your ED&I strategy. So before you embark on your journey, you should really ask yourself these three questions. Where are you now? Where are you going? And how will you get there? So where are you now? First, you need to take a pulse check on your organisation. Find out where you stand. How are your people feeling? What's the gender balance globally or by department or by territory? And what are your attrition rates like? Do they lean into a particular minority group per department? Take an audit, really vital. You need to know where you're heading. So in terms of where you're heading, how do you want to impact not only your internal ED&I focus, but your customer and business growth too? The pillars of your strategy should really feed into your long-term business goals, and you can build it from there. So, for example, you might want to use culture transformation as the main focus and empowering your people as well as driving business growth. So build that framework from the roots up. How will you get there? So once you've set your strategy and then you break that down further, you need to look at the steps you can take to get to that goal. Here we'll explore some of those steps that will set you on the right track. But first, it's so important to recognise that it's vital for organisations to take ED&I seriously, ideally from an authentic perspective versus performative, not only for the reasons I've just mentioned, but as each generation evolves. So, for example, the Gen Y millennial employees and candidates see this as a vital prerequisite for joining an organisation. So it's so important to get your leadership on board. So if we can just move on. In order to build a strategy that works, it helps to ensure all your leaders and employees take a real accountability for that strategy. Again, this doesn't even need to be a scorecard mechanism about gender. I recently heard of an organisation, for example, that has used happiness as a mission that's vital for them. They regularly take a pulse check or a survey, see how happy their people are feeling, which I thought was very fantastic and very unique, actually. But other organisations do build this into their quarterly business reviews, and they've hit their gender parity goal, for example, per business area, and they receive some payment for that. But in my opinion, we shouldn't hire a woman because she's a woman. She has to be the right person for her role, or she will not be set up for success. And I've worked for so many companies where the token woman is hired and then she's expected to act in the way of a man and she becomes unhappy. So underpinning this, and the thread that goes through every element of your process, is your ED&I mission and vision. And this should be evangelized throughout the organizations. Everybody knows where you're heading, what it is, and what your organization stands for. So let's explore now some more long-term structural ways of making the change. Just click on the next slide, Laura. That'd be great. Hope you can see this all right. There's a reasonable amount of information on this slide. But again, here you see the ED&I mission and vision underpinning the process. But this is sandwiched by your employer brand, which Rose mentioned earlier. How does it feel to work for your organisation? Why should people come and work for you? Are they feeling empowered? Are they feeling happy? So put yourself in the shoes of a candidate or an employee from a minority background and test every element of this to ascertain, is your talent process fit for purpose? Do the elements of each part of the talent management process support this type of candidate employee? So from attraction, are you fishing in the right pools? How does the war for talent impact your more technical roles on the gender front? As Laura has mentioned, should you consider apprenticeships, for example, to build that diversity into this area? And as Rose mentioned, are your job descriptions inclusive? Are they going to be attractive to women? Just to back this up, I ran a job description workshop recently where I had 5 men and 5 women around the table. And I asked them to write a job description together for a common role in their department. And I gave them the framework. This is what it needs to look like. And I asked them to fill in the gaps. And, you know, it was such an eye-opening exercise. I urge you to do this. It's quite fascinating. As they started to learn from each other and what was important to see on a job description and how those differences could be bridged. So do take a JD, as Rose has mentioned, and test it. Engagement. Is everyone from your recruiter to your hiring manager saying the same story to the candidate? Are there distortions along the way? How does this impact the candidate experience? Are both your recruiters and hiring managers trained on inclusive hiring solutions? I'm a big fan of structure, so building a competency framework that supports your mission and vision and feeds into the interview process without it being too robotic is quite important. But it also looks at some of the softer skills like growth mindset, for example, which is vital as we walk through an uncertain, ever-changing, agile world. Development. Is there a clear path to success in your company? What does it look like? Is it fit for purpose for minorities? Do you have that support structure in place to empower these individuals that are introverted maybe or need to get their voice heard? So running programs that help these individuals, such as managing your own personal brand or exploring the 3 different competencies, is a great way to help here. And lastly, retention. Is there a fair internal hiring process? Do you have employee resource groups that support minority groups? I'm a huge fan of ERGs, as they are they build internal awareness and really provide a good, strong allyship to minority groups. The BAM group, for example, would ensure that, that restaurants at Microsoft serve Chinese food at Chinese New Year, or Indian food at Diwali, or the LGBTQ team would hold events in the atrium throughout the month of June, and there would be music and rainbow and flags, and each minority group was celebrated and they've made to feel special. So as we think of remote working now and what the new world is going to be like, it's more important than ever that we learn and support the different cultures within our organisations. So on that point, if we just move to my last slide, the area that we can really make a difference to in the long term is really about making sure our culture is inclusive. Remote working can really make an impact to our gender statistic as we return to whatever some sort of normal looks like, to take into consideration your flexible working patterns, for example, and the impact that this can have on your gender representation. I recently hosted a leadership roundtable about how to bring more diversity to the C-suite, and this was something that came up time and time again. So creating access to senior sponsors is also vital. Internal and external mentorship programs creates a vision and aids the employee in their career quest. And then lastly, remember that your culture should be ever evolving and should really be set at the start of your fiscal year and then change from year to year. When we think about the last year and what we've been through as a global community, not just the pandemic, but George Floyd and the BLM movement, and Sarah Everard here in London, and the impact that this has had, not forgetting the Me Too movement, that's really highlighted the treatment of women. Your ED&I mission and vision and your culture should really be ever evolving. It shouldn't stay still, and it should be adapted to your organisation and world events surrounding it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was fantastic. Wow, that was so much detail in there and so many things for people to take away. Brilliant. So as we come to the end of this webinar, and just before we do Q&A, I'm just going to flash up on the screen here everyone's details. If you want to get in touch with any of us about any of the topics that we've been talking about today, please do. We'd love to have a chat with you about it. So I think we have a few questions here. Please feel free to put any more questions in if you would like to. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can properly have a look at that. And so you can all see us in the full. So we have a couple of questions here. So the first one is, what is meant by unconscious bias and what can a recruiter do to address this? So who would like to answer this one?
I think that's one for Emma.
Very happy to take that. You know, there's a lot of controversy about unconscious bias at the moment. Some people think it's a really good idea to talk about it. To some companies, it's a bit old hat these days. Everyone's talked about unconscious bias. But, you know, it's really interesting because it's about hiring or not hiring in your own likeness and being, and understanding why you shouldn't hire in your own likeness and being. And it's interesting. I looked at a hiring project even a few weeks ago, where I was looking at some growth mindset capabilities, and it was for a pre-sales lead role, and I had an internal female that was at flight risk, and I had an external male from a competitor organization. And it was quite fascinating when we really deep dived into some of the, perhaps we talked about the softer skills, like, for example, growth mindset, like being inclusive, like being future looking. And we looked at each candidate and scored them out of 5, sort of almost removing the technical capability of that individual. And it was fascinating because the female candidate actually scored higher. And we managed to retain that candidate and we kept her, and that was fantastic. But it made the hiring manager think very differently about the type of individual that he was hiring. He wasn't going to hire somebody just like him. Now, while she lacked the technical capability, what we did was reorganize the environment, the department, to make sure that she had a very strong second in command that actually was the technical guru. And because she demonstrated growth mindset, she then took herself on a course to reskill some of those technical capabilities. So she actually had sort of the ability to take the department longer or further because she had those kind of those different skills. So thinking about that competency framework is vital when you think about trying to make that shift.
Brilliant. What a well-answered question. Thank you, Emma. I think we have time for a couple more. Let's have a look. Someone's asked, if I could take one thing away to implement tomorrow, what would make the biggest impacts? Rose, would ever go that one?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd first of all say that change takes time and persistence, and it's the accumulation of small changes initially. And I would say, really, it's looking at the role profiling that I spoke about initially, really drilling down into the essentials and the nice to haves. And then I'd also say about job adverts, looking at how you're presenting the job out into the market, and the imagery is very, very key.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I think there's one more. Let me have a look. There's one coming. How long does an apprenticeship take? Well, I can answer that one. Well, in terms of the hiring process for apprenticeships, it really depends what kind of solution the company wants, because you can have a bespoke solution or an out-of-the-box solution. So the bespoke solution, if, for example, there are particular tech languages or a particular project that they want apprentices to work on, then you'd work with the company to make sure that those are the things that we're hiring based on that, to find the right candidates for them. And of course, you can just go for the kind of out-of-the-box one. So it's all about how long does that take. And in terms of how long does an apprenticeship take itself, they generally, depending on the different levels, they go from between 12 to 18 months. Normally the software engineering ones, I think, are between 12 to 15 months, but they can be flexible in terms of if you're doing it while you're already in a part-time job, then it might take a bit longer. Or if you're a first-time apprentice, a first-time kind of new worker, then you can, and that's your main thing, then you can do that too. So that would be my answer for that. And I think that's all we have. I think that's all we have time for. Is there anything else that you, Emma and Rose, that you want to speak about or get across before we sign off?
No, I would just say that, we're in an ever-changing world, right? I don't think we should lose some of the messages and the learnings from the pandemic last year and some of the global events, that happened. And I think we shouldn't go back to as was the year before. We need to really think about how we bridge that gap and take those learnings and look at how we can make the world a more fair and equitable place. It's absolutely vital that we do that, not just for ourselves, but for the younger generations coming into the workplace.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
I agree too, Emma. Well said.
Yeah, and especially all the things that we've learned from the pandemic in terms of how we can actually create a flexible workspace.
Yeah, and the flexible working offering is, it's game changing, particularly for this topic.
Brilliant. Well, we've come to the end of this webinar. I hope everyone's enjoyed this and has some things to take away which they can implement in their own organizations. Again, feel free to get in contact with us to discuss anything further, and you will all be receiving a copy of the webinar itself if there's anything else that you want to look back on. So I hope you have a brilliant rest of Digital Leaders Week, and I hope you can look at other events too. That's it from us. So bye everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Laura. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.